We are back, everybody, and in the booth for the Thursday edition of your source for fantasy hockey news, the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. Lots of news to get to across the nation that is Canada. North of the border, we're focusing on today, people, a little Canadian team special, all the fantasy impacts for your teams, big time bets, and everything else to feed your ear holes with this fantasy content. Let's get right to it. Thank you for joining us.
You're Locked On Fantasy Hockey, your daily podcast on fantasy hockey. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Depending on the time of day, fill yourself up a warm cup of joe, maybe crack yourself a cold one, and sit back and enjoy the Thursday episode of the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast. We are back, people, short from our one-day hiatus. Thanks for holding us down, and thanks for making us your first listen every single day. Today's episode is brought to you by BetOnline. BetOnline.net has you covered this season with more props, odds, and lines than ever before. BetOnline, where the game starts. Today's episode, people, is going to start with a focus on the fantasy hockey happenings of all the teams north of the border. There's a lot of good and bad things happening still with some of these Canadian teams near and dear to our heart. We're going to break that down. We got injury news from the Montreal Canadiens. What's going on with the Toronto Maple Leafs? They're still winning games. They're losing some games. Steele's got some takes about this power play. That's got fantasy implications for your squad if you have some Toronto Maple Leafs in your lineup. You know we're getting to big-time bets at the end of the show. Steele continues to put a little money in his pocket. I'm getting a little distracted with this Aussie Open now, Steele. You got to rein me back in here. Thursday's big-time bets coming up. But the biggest news so far out of the NHL world, I would say, over the last 24 hours in terms of these Canadian teams, Josh Norris, a big-time piece of the puzzle back in the mix in Ottawa.
Yeah.
What's your take on this? You know I'm high on this player. I got some takes here. This is big for Josh Norris fantasy owners and huge for that top six in Ottawa.
Yeah, it's huge for the organization, for the Ottawa Senators to get this guy back in the lineup and playing with the elite other players in the top six forward group for the Senators. So I'm really happy that he's back. I'm also not happy that I traded him a couple of weeks ago or 3 to 4 weeks ago. Very questionable trade at this point, especially since I acquired Kochetkov in that trade and now he's got sent down to the minors. So unfortunate for me to kind of give up on a guy like Josh Norris. You know, again, the timetable for his return was 3, 4, 5 months, and I really needed a goalie. But, you know, I'm happy that he's back in the lineup. I don't know if he's going to go out and, you know, score 2 goals or get a couple of assists with a plus two on the game against the Pittsburgh Penguins. Or maybe he goes out and, you know, he's a -2 and has 0 shots on net. I'm not sure how that, you know, rehabbing the shoulder has been. So, I just want to see him back in action. I really want to see what he does, but I'm really happy that he is back with the team.
38 games missed, Steele. That's going to take a guy, any player, a little bit of time to get going again. And, you know, the coach was very clear about it. 2 ways. DJ Smith today, quote, "We're a different team with him in the lineup." In saying that, it's going to take him some time to get going, quote unquote. This is a game-changing player. You know I talked a lot about Josh Norris. I had him high on our top young guys in the game list. He's going to slot in there with Claude Giroux and DeBrincat. Giroux, though, moving in to still probably take most of the faceoffs, which is interesting, Steele. 60% of his draws Giroux has won this year. He has been a solid addition for the Ottawa Senators. I don't know where they might be without that steadying presence that Giroux has been able to provide with all of these injuries and, you know, ups and downs in the nation's capital this year, Steele. And look, for me, Josh Norris back in the mix. This now solidifies, in my opinion, one of the best top 6 in the game offensively.
Yeah, it definitely does. And, you know, even at the beginning of the season, he played 5 games to open the season with the Senators. And even then, he didn't look that good. He had 2 points in 5 games, didn't really do that much.
Slow
and then he
start.
goes down to injury. Definitely a slow start. But I think the presence of a veteran like Claude Giroux playing on that second line with him, and Giroux is a pass-first type of guy. So maybe that can get him going, feed him the puck a little bit, get him some easy chances at scoring some goals offensively. For Josh Norris. So I think playing with a guy like Claude Giroux can really help Josh Norris kind of get back into form a little bit, get him more confident, comfortable, being back in the lineup and playing at such a high pace after missing, like you said, 38 games.
We're going to talk about Cale Makar. We're going to talk about Slafkovsky and the Montreal Canadiens. We're going to talk about the Leafs and get to bets. But the main takeaway for me, Steele, and hit me with what you think about this, is the impact it's going to mean fantasy-wise for the pieces around him now in that top six. Some say, oh, he's going to eat into the minutes. He is going to bring a whole other wrinkle of offense, and that means more goals scored for that top six. Not just DeBrincat and Giroux. It could be Batherson. It could be Stützle. It could be Tkachuk. Anyone who mixes in the power play unit as well, Steele. This means big things for the Ottawa Senators and the fantasy owners of all those pieces.
It creates big things for the power play as well. They might have one of the best first and second power play units in the NHL. When you think about, you throw Thomas Chabot, Jake Sanderson in there on both the first and second power play, quarterbacking on the blue line. You know, Josh Norris on the right side, Alex DeBrincat on the left, Giroux in front of the net. First power play's got Brady Tkachuk, where he loves to go right in front of the net as well. So just a different and better element for the Senators team. And it does make a big difference. If Josh Norris is in the lineup and he's healthy the entire season, the Ottawa Senators are a way better team. And they're up in the standings, probably competing for a wild card spot at this point. Obviously, it hasn't gone their way, and they got to look towards next season now. But having him back in the lineup, getting him confident and playing along with these elite players that he's been playing with for the last couple of years, and now Claude Giroux, it's going to do wonders for his game.
Yeah, and that's also just indicative of how good the rest of the Eastern Conference is as well, because you might be saying, Steele, looking ahead to the next season, it's only halfway through. There is way too many teams for them to leapfrog, in my opinion. It's not even that they're statistically really that far out of maybe a wild card. Just so many good teams in the Metro and at the top of that Atlantic. They just are going to be on the outside looking in unless they do something really, really impressive. We're going to get to some impressive fantasy pieces after the break. Big time bets coming up as well. But you know where you're going to go place those bets. It's with our friends at Bet Online. Today's episode is brought to you by betonline.net, your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis this season and every season. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there, from pro football to the basketball hardcourt. They have it covered for you at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, just like you love the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast, you can find more of those over at BetOnline as well, where they're always the fastest and easiest way for you to get all of your betting info and breakdowns. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. That's BetOnline, where the game starts.
Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on your favorite podcast platform, including YouTube. So make sure you go hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate all the love and support. We are going to get to big time bets at the end of the episode.
Yes, sir.
We're going to talk about the Toronto Maple Leafs as well.
Woo!
But let's talk a little bit about Juraj Slafkovsky. He's out for the next 3 months.
Yeah.
Tough news for himself, as well as the Montreal Canadiens organization. I don't know what your take is on this, but honestly, I don't even think he should have been playing in the NHL this season. He's been pretty bad. He's been awful. 10 points in 39 games. Hasn't recorded a point in 15 straight games for the Montreal Canadiens. He's barely playing 12 minutes right now. He's out for the next 3 months with a lower body injury. And, just like what the Seattle Kraken did with Shane Wright, gave him a couple of opportunities. I don't think Seattle Kraken used Shane Wright properly as well. They didn't barely giving him any ice time, but he just doesn't look confident out there. He wasn't getting the ice time. It's not a smart move personally for me. Putting a guy into a situation at, such a young age, and he's not succeeding, he loses confidence, and you're not putting him in the right spots to kind of get those opportunities and get comfortable at the NHL level. And even, I could relate this to a guy like Alexis Lafreniere. Like, that guy was a number one overall pick.
I could see it.
Big expectations once he joins the New York Rangers lineup. They didn't use him properly. Like, he was in the bottom six for a while. He gets the opportunity up front, wasn't able to get his confidence going, playing a different style than he was used to in the minor leagues. And again, Alexis Lafreniere is now in his third year in the season and still just doesn't seem like he's getting any better. So that puts a little bit worry for me. And I just think with a guy like Slafkovsky, he kind of needed to be sent down to the minors. Now he's out for 3 months with a lower body injury. So it's kind of a tough situation.
4 goals, 6 assists in 39 games this season, 9 minutes in his last, recently played game before he went down with injury. He does not need surgery. Likely the season for him. I'm
Yeah.
here for everything you're saying. Lafreniere to me had a little bit more hype behind him as a number 1 overall.
Yeah. Yeah. Of
Obviously,
course.
Slafkovsky wasn't even pegged to be it, so the expectations were even higher. I'd say Lafreniere much more disappointing to this point in his career. But I do agree with you that I don't really know if he was brought into the best situation. He
Yeah.
didn't have a ton, he's playing with a bunch of middle sixers, even bottom sixers. I don't think he got a ton of good looks with the elite players on this team. Maybe he didn't deserve it, but then he shouldn't be there in the first
Yeah.
place. Maybe we should have our boy Hattie Kalakash on from Locked On Prospects to see what he thinks about this deal. That's a little good idea to break that down. But what's interesting to me is I still like this decision for the Montreal Canadiens that they took this player. And I think what we've seen from him at all the levels that he did, World Juniors, World Championships, playing in Europe, he can get it done. NHL is a different breed, and he's going to have
Yeah.
to elevate his game and play with a lot more confidence. Does he have the skill? He definitely has the size. I think
Yeah.
he can tighten up the skating and definitely between the ear holes, like I like to say, he's got to figure it out mentally and get confident, and that's only going to come with time. But yeah, Steele, I'm with you. I don't know if I was the Montreal Canadiens, if I would have brought him into the situation that they have going on right now. They are in a rebuild mode, so having him as a part of it will be important. If you're a fantasy or a dynasty or a keeper player, you're hanging on to Slafkovsky. He's not going anywhere except for maybe if you have minor eligibility slots, he's going right there. The NHL buzz, Steele, there's lots going on. We're going to talk about Cale Makar in a sec, but the Toronto Maple Leafs need a little check-in here, a little visit, because they
Yeah.
are in second place in the Atlantic Division. They're knocking on the doorstep for right there in second place in the Eastern Conference and second place in the entire NHL, right there behind the Boston Bruins, Carolina Hurricanes, and others. They've had a pretty good season. Some of this play that you've seen, though, of late, a little bit concerning for you. Why don't you hit me with your take? Because this might have some impact on some of these fantasy pieces up front for the Toronto Maple Leafs.
Yeah, and there's a lot of ways I want to go with this. I first want to start off with
Mm,
the goaltending situation for the
okay.
Toronto Maple Leafs. Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov. As of right now, Murray's 11-5-2 record with a 272 goals against average and a
Mm,
911 save percentage. Goals against average could be a little bit lower, but he had a tough spotting the other night against the Florida Panthers. Samsonov, 13-4-1 record on the season at 224 goals against average and a
mm.
916 save percentage. Very close stats, very similar stats so far,
It's true.
halfway up in the season. And I'm looking at this on the long term right now, down the road,
Interesting.
end of the regular season, looking for the first round of the playoffs. Who would you go with? Who would you rely on at this point in the season with these numbers? Because you either go with the guy in Matt Murray who's won 2 Stanley Cups,
Mm.
know that he's injury prone though. He can go down at any second of the game. Again, a little bit shaky last game against the Panthers, and Samsonov has a great record, a great goals against average, and a very decent save percentage at 916. Do you
Mm.
give him a shot where he's a little bit of an up and comer right now?
It's a very, very intriguing question. And obviously, given the landscape and what we know with this Toronto Maple Leafs team over the last number of years, Steele, that might be one of those loaded questions because there is just so much baggage that comes along with what the answer implies with this Toronto Maple Leafs team and the goaltending situation. I like that preamble I just did, and no, I'm not going to cop out. Honestly, from what I've seen from Matt Murray over the last 2 games, I'd be a little bit concerned if that's where I'd be leaning for the game 1 starter. It's right now going to look like Tampa Bay. Tampa Bay and
Yeah.
the Toronto Maple Leafs are another crash course. We're talking January 19th today, and we're already looking ahead till April and May. For me, Steele, it's Samsonov. And let's just go with the fact that that game against Boston, I know Murray had a couple of nice saves. He didn't look the best, and he could have won that game for them with another couple of saves there. Didn't look too good against the Florida Panthers. I know overall he has been pretty solid, but the answer for me is Samsonov. But fantasy-wise, both of those players are going to continue to be good options
Yeah.
because this Toronto Maple Leafs team is just that good. And say what you will about what Matt Murray has done over the last couple, pretty good stats, pretty good win numbers, and both of those goalies are still going to continue to be in line for wins. So fantasy-wise, both, but I'm going game 1 against Tampa. It's the Russian netminder for me.
I would have to agree with you there. I think as of right now, it's Ilya Samsonov. And again, if it doesn't work out, you have the veteran Matt Murray who can back him up and come right back into game 2 and kind of take it on from there. They're going to have to keep at this pace. They're going to have to keep winning games because Tampa Bay is 4 or 5 points back from them right now. They have 3 or 4 games in hand at this point. If they want
4 points back, 3 games in hand.
Yeah, 4 points back, 3 games in hand. If they
And
want
picking
home
up
ice,
steam steal,
yeah,
8-2-0 and a 4-game heater.
if they want home ice advantage, they got to keep this pace up, and their goalies have to be a little bit better, especially Matt Murray if he wants to be the number 1 guy and that guy starting in game 1.
Good point too, Steele, because for 2 reasons. Not only have the Toronto Maple Leafs excelled this season, but you don't want to go up against Tampa in their own barn either. 17-4-1 the Tampa Bay Lightning this year, other than the Boston Bruins, obviously. They have the most home wins out of any team in the NHL, tied with the Winnipeg Jets. So you don't want to go into that Tampa Bay barn, which you know can get rocking. And what we'll say what you will about the Toronto Maple Leafs, this is the Tampa Bay team that's 2-time cup, 3 cup trips in the pocket still. So people need to throw some respect on that team's name because we saw it last year in this series between these 2 teams. They go down, they don't get rattled. They actually get fired up, and there's almost a calmness to this team. You know it comes from John Cooper behind the bench. Let's not get too fired up here. Hit me with your take on what you're seeing from the power play very quickly, because that is going to start impacting fantasy owners on the power play side and the general point side for the Leafs.
Yeah, honestly, I just think they need to change things up a little bit. I think Morgan Rielly should be back up on the top power play unit and get him comfortable. He's realistically he's gonna be back there come playoff time and towards the end of the regular season. And I know it's a very difficult time coming back from a knee surgery or a knee injury.
He hasn't had a good year.
He hasn't had a good year. It's been a very rough one for him. But coming back from a knee injury, your skating ability is just not quite there yet. Trying to get up with the group on a rush is a little bit harder than usual for him. So I think trying to get him back on the power play, trying to get him even his first goal would be a great start for the power play to put him back on the top unit. Honestly, like we were just talking about this before we jumped on here, and overall the power play, percentage is still good. It's still above 20%, but just last game, again, I'm looking kind of towards the playoffs. You go 2-7, you get 7 power play opportunities. You only score on 2 of them. Trying to get entry into the zone was probably the most frustrating and difficult thing I've ever seen in my life. They continue to drop it back and then, throw some soft muffins across the blue line and they get intercepted. I don't know if the power play was bad or if the Panthers penalty kill was just that good, but it was a rough game to watch the power play for. Matthews scores with 1 second left at the end of the second period on a really bad call, I believe it was. So again, it's just that, as well as just 8, I was looking at the game. The Panthers were out hitting them 18-4 heading into the third period. And if your power play is just not going overall, it looks sloppy out there and you're not a physical team, it might work in the regular season, but in playoffs, we talk about this all the time. It's a different atmosphere.
It is.
If you go into the third period,
you need special teams to be clicking in the playoffs.
And you need to be physical. You need the grit. You need to be a physical team. Panthers showcased that last night. They still lost the game. They got 1 point out of it, but they were a very physical team out there. They were finishing their checks every single time they had a guy lined up, and the Leafs just weren't doing that. So that kind of scares me a little bit going down the road, and especially in the first round of the playoffs.
Very quickly, fantasy-wise, my takeaways from what you're saying there, the Florida Panthers still have a lot of good offensive pieces, Carter Verhaeghe being one of them. I'm high on that player as well. Good Niagara Ice Dog product. I love my Niagara region steel. But realistically, the Florida Panthers played a better game for majority of the first period and second period and should have done a lot better than what the result was last night. Willie Nylander saves the bacon for the Maple Leafs. But let's talk about Cale Makar after the break. Let's talk about big-time bets. There's going to be a lot more fantasy analysis and breakdown in the lead up to the playoffs. We got guests coming on. We got special co-hosts. We got a lot of new content coming out. But we also want to hear from our listeners. Make sure you're in the comments. If you're on Spotify, Apple Music, drop us a review, leave us some feedback if you're feeling it or not. We're trying to get better. This show's for you people. We're glad to do it every day. Steele, take us away because I'm fired up for bets. And I do have actually tonight, I got 4 bets ready to roll.
Absolutely love it. Another big night of games Thursday. Great matchups as well. So I'm definitely intrigued to see what your big time bets are. We are going to get there very, very soon. after we talk about Cale Makar. But first, this episode is also brought to you by our friends at Built Bar. If you're looking for a delicious and healthy treat, then you need to go out right now and get some Built Bar. If you're like me, where you want to start eating healthier in the new year and you don't want to compromise the taste, then man, do I have just the thing for you. You have to go to Built right now. And with Built, healthy is actually tasty. Seriously, they're so delicious, you won't think they're good for you, but they're actually the perfect New Year's resolution. What makes Built Bar so good? Again, I say this every time I talk about my favorite product right now. Built Bar are covered in 100% real chocolate, right up my alley. Absolutely love it. And they come in unbelievably delicious flavors like churro, peanut butter brownie, coconut almond, and many, many more. And now you don't even have to wait and order a box on built.com. You still can do that, but now you can go to your local Walmart or Sam's Club, go to the pharmacy section, pick yourself up a 4-box or a 6-box of Built Bars. Absolutely delicious. Again, at your retail store, Walmart or Sam's Club, and go pick yourself up some Built Bar. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. Don't forget, we are free and available on all podcast platforms, including YouTube. Go hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Flip and I appreciate it. Thank you so much for tuning in. We are going to get to big time bets. We keep saying that we are going to get where the money is. Cale Makar, though, day to day for the Colorado Avalanche. Definitely a tough spot. Again, losing a big piece. It is just day to day, but they just get Valeri Nichushkin back. It seems like their team's coming full circle. They're coming whole again, and Cale Makar goes down to an injury.
Makar, 6-game point streak, Steele. And normally when someone goes down day to day, there's only a handful of players that you and I will come on this show and make sure that all of our listeners know about, because he's just that important to both his team on the ice and your fantasy team. Cale Makar is one of those guys.
Yeah.
And, his point streak and his overall quality this season, last season and in the playoffs, 4 goals and 5 assists over his last 6-game point streak. 13 goals are tied with Dahlin for the second in the league, only one behind Erik Karlsson, and he's 5th with 43 points for D-Men this season. He is a really, really special player. But day-to-day means something. You never know with these injuries. I'm not going to speculate. I'm not going to go there. He's hurt right now. Bednar, he's injury-related out. He's going to miss at least a couple of games, hopefully just that. But the main thing for me here, Steele, is aside from the impact it's going to have on this Colorado team who's starting to look really, really good, even in 12 minutes of ice time over in that 6-3 win against the Red Wings, Makar had 2 goals and an assist in 12 minutes. So this guy turns the page for you fantasy-wise or for the Avs, and his absence will be felt. But it's just they just started to get healthy and look really good. What's this going to do just to that momentum? I hope nothing, because I want to see this race go off in that Central Division with these top 4 teams in that division.
Yeah, the Colorado Avalanche, the Nashville Predators trying to claw up the standings right now, just right, a couple points below the wild card spot as of right now. So those 2 teams are definitely trying to make it to the playoffs. We know that they're going to give it a good shot for the remainder of the regular season. Let's get over to big time bets, though, where the money is made. I'm very intrigued now to see what you're picking for tonight, Flip. So I'll let you start us off here. What's your first pick?
I just a quick glance at the standings today, Steele, in preparation for this show, doing a little research. The Philadelphia Flyers are only 5 points back of the Pittsburgh Penguins.
Yeah, they're 8-2 in their last 10, aren't they?
8-2 in their last 10 and playing some pretty good hockey. And when I took a look into the numbers, not only are they playing against the Chicago Blackhawks tonight, not only are they 7-2 in their last 9 against the Blackhawks overall, a team that they do very well against. Looking at some of these teams that they beat, Washington twice, Buffalo, LA.
Yeah.
These are some pretty good teams that they're beating. Yeah, of course. They beat up on Anaheim twice. That's part of it. But also beating some good teams. And like I said, Chicago, 1-6 in their last 7 games against the Flyers, 3-13 in their last 16 games against the Eastern Conference. They don't like going against the different conference. I don't know why. Philly, money line, my first pick of the night. And yeah, I do have 3 more, Steele. That's just how much I'm feeling it tonight. The line, I can get it for you. Currently, Philly minus 213 at home. So it's going to be a part of my parlay. That's why I wanted to mention it. A good parlay ad, Philadelphia Flyers on the money line tonight.
Honestly, I was thinking about the Flyers even on the puck line because I did pick them on
Wow.
the puck line the other night against the Ducks. It banged out for me. And again, like you said, they've dominated the Chicago Blackhawks, it seems like, in recent years. So might even put that into my parlay, money
Thank
line
you.
or puck line. Feeling the Flyers again. They're very hot of late in their last 10 games. My first pick comes from the Minnesota Wild Carolina Hurricanes game.
Interesting.
This one, I would even tell people it's not one of my picks, not one of my 3 picks. It might enter my parlay at some point, but I would even tell people to pick the Wild on the money line because you're getting some great odds at plus 135. And the
Yep.
Wild have won their last 3 matchups against the Carolina Hurricanes. So it's trending that direction. But my first pick is actually the Wild Hurricanes under 6 goals at minus
I was
130.
looking at that as well.
Minnesota's last 3 games have gone under the number. Carolina has been, the last, 6 or 7 games for the Hurricanes have been over the number, but we know they can be a stingy defensive team.
They
The
need to get
Wild
back to
have
that
been,
as well.
they need to get back to that, especially with Anderson back in the net. I can see this
Exactly.
being a 3-1, 2-1 type of game, maybe a
Interesting.
3-2, but I do expect this one to be under the number. And if you want to take the money line, the Wild have won their last 3 games. They've won their last 3 games against the Hurricanes.
Yeah.
I would lean Wild because at odds at plus 135, it's definitely some good odds.
I like those odds, and I was looking at it as well. That's a bit of a coin flip game for me personally.
Yeah.
I like the under. I would lean under and maybe stay away from picking the winner. But if you're gonna pick the winner, if you're doing a super parlay or you're getting a little degen with a couple of bucks here or there, Wild worth the money. Very quickly, Steele, because the episode is getting long in the tooth. We like keeping it short and sweet and feeding you what you need in a 30-minute time span. Winnipeg at Toronto. You might go steal or flip, sorry. This two teams score a lot of goals. I'm going to go, these are two of the best teams. Definitely, we focused on Canada today. It's the two best teams up north this year. That's clear. And I think these two teams are more indicative of going under the number 4-1 last time they met. And when I look into the numbers for the Winnipeg Jets, 14 of their last 17 games under the number, and 9 of their last 10 road games under the number. They go away from home and they shut it down. I don't know if Hellebuck plays even crazy on the road or what. They are playing really good hockey right now, Steele. 8-2 over their last 10. I think the Toronto Maple Leafs are going to have their hands full. Very good litmus test. See how they stack up against a very good team. But I think that means we're going to see a tight checking, low scoring game. 6.5. And very quickly, my third pick before I throw it back to you. The Red Wings have not looked good. And I like to talk them up for turning it around over the last couple of years. Lots of good players. They're not looking good. 2 wins out of their last 8 games, and they are doo-doo on the road. 1 win out of their last 9 games away from Detroit. This just feels like a really good spot for Vegas, and this is a tough spot for any team on the road, let alone an Eastern Conference one, and one who doesn't play well away from home. Vegas on the money line, Steal, another good addition into that parlay at minus
Yeah.
170. This just feels like a spot for Vegas to slap them up here at home.
Absolutely agree with you. My second pick, I'm taking the Capitals on the puck line against the Arizona Coyotes. I'll leave that one without with too much.
I
depth
like
into
that. Leave it spicy.
But,
You want the breakdowns? Hit Steele up on Twitter or hit us up on the account.
and for my lock of the night, I am going with the Golden Knights on the money line minus 160 against the Detroit Red Wings.
Bang. And I explained why. So thank you very much, Steele, for teeing it up. My final pick. Over-unders I've been doing my thing with the over-unders. So I'm going to go back to the well between when I looked at the head-to-head over the last 3 games between the Montreal Canadiens and Florida Panthers, Steele. How about, just over their last 10, 9 of the last 10 between these two have gone over the total. And the last 3 games have produced 31 goals over the last 3 games. That includes a 7-2 final, a 10-2 final, and a 7-4 final over the last 3 games between these two. Crooked numbers, all going well over the total. My lock of the night, these two teams score and allow a lot of goals, and Bobrovsky did not look good against the Toronto Maple Leafs. Say what you will about the rest of the Panthers crew. This one goes over the number, Steele, for sure, over 6.5. That's my lock of the night. Juicy 13-game board on tap for tonight.
I tried telling everyone last week, you can't trust Sergei Bobrovsky in this spot right now.
It's true.
They need to get Spencer Knight back. I don't know what's going on with the goaltenders, but you can't trust them right now. Thank you so much for making the Locked On Fantasy Hockey Podcast your first listen every single day. We are available Monday through Friday, 7 o'clock in the morning Eastern time. You don't want to miss out. It's on your favorite podcast platform and on YouTube. Hit the subscribe, hit the follow button. Thank you so much for tuning in for today's episode with Flip and I. Have a great day. Good luck with all your bets out there, and we shall see you back here again tomorrow.
Peace.